Welcome to the Success Inspired Podcast, a business and personal development podcast to help you accomplish more in life and realize your true potential. And now, here is your host, Vit Muller.
Hello, everybody. Vit here again from Success Inspired Podcast. I'm super excited today to introduce you today's guest. So my guest today is a motivational keynote speaker, business keynote speaker. He's a published author. He's a CEO and respected business leader, willing to take risks and new challenges. He has more than 40 years of executive level experience in national and global transportation, industrial engineering, inside operation, and supply chain management at UPS, where he served as a president at various divisions. Today, we'll be talking about entrepreneurial spirit, work ethics, and balanced leadership. Please welcome to the show, Rocky Romanella.
Well, thank you, sir, for that wonderful introduction. I guess you could say in many ways I have a good experience, or I'm just old. I'm not sure about which one you want to pick there. I like to think I'm young at heart, but it is a 40-year career, that's for sure.
Well, Rocky, I've got you here on video, and to me, you look fresh. You must be keeping fit.
There you go. Oh, well, fitness is an important part of the routine, right? I mean, if you're energetic, if you're fit and you feel good about yourself, people feel good about you as well.
Absolutely. Now, Rocky, I've gone through a bit of an intro, but for me and for us, for the listeners, can you just expand on that a little bit more? What was your beginning? What was your journey into this?
Interestingly enough, I started working at UPS part-time, working my way through college. And I actually went to school to be a high school history teacher and a baseball coach. And I love the teaching concept and, the teaching profession I have such great admiration for. And of course, I love coaching. So as I was working my way through college as a part-timer unloading trailers, I recognized pretty quickly that the best leaders were those leaders who can get their people to connect the dots. And so for me, I never gave up my teaching or coaching passion. I just did it in a different venue, right? Instead of being in a traditional classroom or on a field of play, I did it inside a business. And so I got my coaching fix and my teaching fix through the ability to be a leader inside of UPS. Now, UPS had a promotion from within policy, which I took advantage of. And so, as I started the job, my dad told me two things that stuck with me throughout my career. The first was, whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you, and then learn your job and learn some more. And so as I was growing and developing inside UPS and people would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, we've got this new responsibility for you, I may not have felt ready, or I may have lacked a little bit of confidence or felt I didn't have the skill for that next job. But the thing I learned out, it's a valuable lesson I took throughout my career is that as a leader, there are times when you have to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And you bridge that gap of confidence and knowledge as they're growing and developing, and you kind of bridge them there. And then you kind of get that break-even point, sort of like you do in a business. And then that's when, their confidence and their skills match up with the job responsibilities. And then that's when you take that step back. That's when you don't overmanage. That's when you let them fly. And as a coach, you do that. As a personal trainer, you do that. In all that you do, there are times that you're believing in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And so I got that opportunity at UPS. And the thing that I think is interesting for my UPS career than maybe some of the more traditional careers at UPS is I was able to do the non-traditional things. So we purchased mailboxes, et cetera. We branded to the UPS store. We purchased over 20 companies and built what's today UPS Supply Chain Solutions. And I ran this side of the world. I know you're on the other side. I ran this side of the world for UPS. And so they were great opportunities for me to learn, grow, and develop. I retired from UPS after 36 years and was recruited to be a CEO of a telecom company. We built cell towers, upgraded cell towers. We had a sale there. And then I started my own business, 360 Management Service. So I guess you could say my biggest failure is retirement. I'm struggling with the whole retirement. So I think my wife is very happy I'm doing other things besides following her around the house too, I would say.
Why would you say your biggest failure is retirement?
Well, because I think that, for me, I never really settled into, playing golf or doing a lot of traveling. For me, I felt this was a great opportunity for me to give back. I believe legacy is such an important part of, who you are and what you did as a leader. And so for me, legacy is that concept of, do you leave things a little better than you found them? Are people better because of their time with you. And for me, what I'm doing today as a keynote speaker, leadership trainer, or doing some consulting and process improvement and coaching, to me, this is my opportunity to give back. So it gives me time to do things with my family and our 7 grandchildren, but it also gives me a time period to stay engaged. I wrote my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, and I feel good about the fact that I can give back a little bit. I worked with some wonderful people who mentored me and trained and helped me along the way. Hopefully I did those same things for the people I was engaged with along the way. And now this opportunity in this part of my life is to take those experiences, put them down in a book or maybe in a keynote or in some leadership training, and help some other people along the way. So to be completely retired from business has been tough for me. I just enjoy doing what I'm doing. And so I guess that's I don't think I'll be that retired guy that just plays golf all the time. Maybe because I'm a bad golfer. That's probably it. It's probably because I'm a bad golfer.
There's other sports you can took up. You can do darts. But what I love about everything here is what you said is there's a few things. But one I want to touch on is the purpose. We only live one life. We need to have purpose at all the stages of the life. And like you said, you didn't really like the idea of retirement, just playing golf. You feel like there's more to it. And your purpose, like you said, is leaving that legacy. It's so important to have that purpose, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, without purpose, we drift. With purpose, we stay on course. And so I think each of us has to understand. And really, if you think about, purpose, another way to translate it is, what's your brand? What do you stand for? What are the things that differentiate you from everybody else? And if you think about products have brands. If you name a product, people kind of know exactly what you're talking about. Well, people have, each of us has a brand as well. And so I think that for me, my brand was always this concept of being thoughtful. I tell people all the time, I get the opportunity to speak at colleges and juniors and seniors, or at, high schools, juniors and seniors. And of course, you talk a lot about that journey they may be starting or beginning those career steps. And I always tell people, think of the word you want someone to use to describe you at the end of your career. So what's that word, Vit, that you think you would want someone to use to describe you at the end of your career?
I would like people to describe me as somebody who was able to provide value through fitness. And I think ultimately, with this podcast and everything I've done for the last 10 years has been, helping people through fitness, right? So if I can leave something in the world that keeps on inspiring more people to live more healthy, active lifestyle, then I'm happy. There's already a lot when it comes to fitness. There's a lot of programs. There's a lot of new, unique gyms and solutions to keeping people fit, and a bunch of really crazy, wild, innovative ideas that are about to come on the market as well. So there's a lot. So it'll definitely be, if I want to leave this legacy and be memorable, I think I'll need to figure out a way to make that dent, so I'm not missed in the noise.
So think about it. So then the word that maybe that you could use to describe you at the end of your career is balance. You want people to have that balance, work, but also a fitness, of health. And so I think that's important to think about what that word is. And it's tough to answer that question when you get asked it like this on the spot. But if you think about it, like for me, the word was always thoughtful. I wanted to be considered a thoughtful leader, a person who thought of things from its widest consequences, how it impacted our people, our customers, our share owners, our stakeholders. And so for me, the word was thoughtful. And for you, it could be the word balance, or it could be another word. But what's important about that word as you start your journey, or you start your career, or you start to work on your brand, what you do is you start to build a mosaic to that word. All the things that you do support that word. And I think that's what's important, because that's your brand then. When someone says, well, what's Rocky Romanella all about? Hey, I got this job. When they call someone who's worked for me in the past and they say, hey, I'm going to work for Rocky. What's he like? Well, they're going to really tell you my brand. Well, you better bring hard work and enthusiasm. It's about integrity and safety. Those are his key things. If you've got a problem, it's okay to go talk to him. His door is always open. Though that's your brand. And I think that's what's important, because as we travel through this journey, both personally and professionally, we're building our brand. It's what's our brand promise? What do we stand for? What are the things? Who are we? What do we stand for? But I think most importantly, what are the things we won't compromise? Because that's where you lose your credibility, when you compromise on those values or you compromise on your brand. Once you break that brand promise, like a company or a product, it's hard to get that back again.
Absolutely. And you're totally right. Like, you've put me on the spot there a little bit. It is a question that I haven't, to be honest, really asked myself on that bigger picture, like what I really want to live. I know why I'm doing this podcast and what I'm doing sort of in the short term, in the next few years, what my vision is there. But yeah, long term, I think if you ask me this question in 10 years, I think it'll be a bit more matured. At the moment, it's still sort of crystallizing, but great point.
Well, that's okay. I mean, but that's how you evolve. You have those moments of, like, and I call them aha moments. That's what I try to create in my keynote speeches, or maybe through the book, or through conversations like you and I are having on podcasts. What's that aha moment? Because, most people will read a book and they'll put it down. I know people will read a book and they'll say, well, I do a lot of those things. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, that was my goal when I wrote this book, was, that you'll go through this book and you'll see these things and you'll say, hey, I do that. Well, that's a good thing. That reinforces that you are doing the right things. You're on the right path. But if I can create that aha moment, so in this podcast tonight, hopefully there'll be some, pearls of wisdom or some, tilt ahead kind of things. But if we can get a couple aha moments like this, if this is your aha moment, then this has been a successful conversation. It's just a way for you to think of things differently. I got to think about that. What is that word that describes me? How do I want people to describe me at the end of my career? It's a thought-provoking thing. And that's really what you want to do, is be thought-provoking and help people get to that answer as best they can. You're not directing them to the answer. You're helping them develop the answer or uncover the answer for themselves.
That's where coaching becomes so powerful, right? Coaching and leadership too, but the aspect of coaching, it's very effective when it comes to leading people, right? Because at some point you need to have that two-way discussion with somebody that you want to perhaps help them change direction, help them find that solution, but you want them to figure it out on their own, right? And that's where good coaching questions, coming from the perspective of, I'm just here to show you the way. I'm just here to help you navigate that process of figuring out what it is that you need to do, right?
Well, that's a great point you're bringing up. And so think about, so one of the important aspects, or one of the core values of a good coach, is they're individuals who absolutely don't care who gets the credit. Because if they cared who got the credit, they would be telling you what to do, and then they would be like, hey, I gave you this information, and now look where you are. A really good coach, to your point, helps you find that answer and then start to embrace that answer, and it becomes your answer. And you step back as a coach, and you're so excited that individual, they connected. That's what great teachers do, right? They get people to connect the dots. That's why for me, coaching and teaching was such a great combination for me. And as I said in the beginning, I never gave up those two passions. I just did it in a different place. But you're absolutely right. I mean, great coaches understand that working together works, and that I have no concern about who gets the credit. My biggest concern is that you understand what we're trying to accomplish, and you can get there, and you see how you're going to get there, and you provide the energy to get there.
And you buy into it, and you become fully invested in. That's what I love about going through that process, because it really creates that solution for the other person. And if it's a team, then everybody benefits, because then everybody gels and everybody is fully invested. It's the same with fitness, right? You can tell somebody, they come to you, you can tell them how to exercise, you can tell them what food to eat, you can tell them all the aspects around health and fitness that they need to change. But unless they really buy into it, and then they realize the importance of it, what it could do for them, it's always going to be a drag. You're just continually just going to be the pusher, and it's not fun.
No, that's why, when I created this balanced leadership approach, there was 3 parts of it, thinking like a customer, feeling like a valued individual, but acting like an owner. Those are the 3 key constituents that have to be represented at the table, right? Customers, people, shareholders, stakeholders. But the feelings you should have is, I think like a customer, I feel like I'm a valued individual, but I act like an owner. And that ownership piece is so important because that ownership piece is the buy-in piece. Oh, I've got a good idea. I present it to you, and then I look at you and I say, well, you know what? This is a really good idea. Our customers are represented. Our people are represented. Our shareholder stakeholders are represented. We can make a profit. Then the last question I would ask you is, hey, if you own this business, if this was your candy store, if this was your gym, would you do it? And when that person says, yes, absolutely, I'd write that check from my own personal checkbook to do this. Well, that's the buy-in you need. That's the ownership. And when people are coming to you as a personal trainer, that's what you're looking for, that buy-in. Are you calling them at 6 a.m.? Are you telling them to set their alarm at 6 a.m. to get there to the gym before work? Or are they showing up at 5:45 ready to go because they've bought in and because they've taken ownership of their personal health, their nutrition, their wellness? That's what you're looking for, is that person who's acting like an owner. I own this.
Exactly. And then everything is smoother. Everything just becomes a meeting halfway. They getting good results. They're fully invested, and it makes the job of the trainer a lot easier as well. It doesn't feel like I said, like you're just pushing and they just continually just waiting for you to keep on kicking them in the butt.
It's funny. In business, we talk a lot about empowerment. You want to empower your people. And when you ask someone what empowerment is, most people will say, well, treating people with dignity and respect. And that's true, but true empowerment is when people discipline themselves. When I'm harder on me than you are on me, then I'm empowered. I've taken ownership of this. There's an old commercial from years ago here in the States where a young goalie lets the puck in and he's all upset. He's banging the hockey stick against the goal, and the coach comes over and gives him a lifesaver candy and says it's okay. Well, the important part of that commercial is that young goalie was empowered. You don't need to pile on when someone's that upset. He's already or she's already disciplined themselves.
Yeah.
But when you walk over to that goalie and you're like, hey, what just happened? And the goalie says, I can't believe it. The defense is not playing hard. I got to do everything myself. I've got to stop all the pucks. They're not empowered. They're finding excuses. So when someone's empowered, the way you know they are empowered is they discipline themselves. They're harder on you. And at that moment, you don't need to be the person piling on, telling them, hey, you should have done a better job. It's the opposite. You're handing them the lifesaver. It's okay. Things are going to happen. Let's work through this. And that's the same in business and in life. And, think about it in a gym when a person's that upset that they haven't been able to get to that point, or maybe they haven't hit that goal yet. And they're so upset. They're so frustrated. Well, that's when they're empowered. They own their health. They own the process or the plan you've put together. Now you're trying to be the coach, the cheerleader. It's okay. We're going to get there. Maybe we did 9 of these sets, 9 push-ups today. I know 10 was the plan, but you did 9. I had a nun in Catholic school that used to always say to us, it's not where you are relative to everyone else. It's where you are from where you started. And think about that. If I was when I got here and I could barely do 1 push-up and now I'm doing 9 in this period of time, that may be great results. There's some people next to me doing 12 and 15, and I'm thinking, well, they're doing 12 and 15. They look like my age. We look like it's about the same body type. How come I can't do 12 or 15? Yeah, but when I got here, I was doing 1. So where I am from where I started, and I think that's important lesson for entrepreneurs many times too. They put so much pressure on themselves. They started this business. They had a plan for 18 months to break even. They're in month 9, they're close, and they're so frustrated that they haven't broken even yet. Well, where you are from where you started, you're way ahead of where you thought you were going to be, but you're just putting that much more pressure on yourself. So I think that's so important to keep that in perspective.
And I think also the reason why this happens is that we tend to often compare ourselves to others, and it's a bad thing. I know but it does happen, right? We do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the competitiveness in all of us, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But it's just when it becomes too extreme, when you're like comparing every aspect of your life, and then you become unhappy because you feel like I'm not where a lot of other people are in my age and that sort of stuff. It's when you really stop focusing yourself and you start focusing too much on the outside world. And then you lose that connection with what was your actually initial desire that you wanted to achieve.
I get asked quite often question about, entrepreneurs, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, currently today, small business owners. And they always ask me, what are some of the things that you see? And one of the things I see that I think is, you can't allow your strength to become your weakness. And that's, if you think about it from entrepreneur's perspective for a second,
Mm-hmm.
think about an entrepreneur. No one's more vested than they are. Think about your business, your gym. No one's more vested than you are. No one understands the business better than you do. No one's more committed than you are. What's your weakness? No one knows the business better than you do. No one's more vested than you are. No one's more committed than you are, right? So entrepreneurs sometimes tend to allow their strengths to become their weakness. So for example, they struggle with adding that first employee. They sometimes become too tactical when they need to take a step back and take a longer vision look at, well, what's my business going to look like in the next 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months from now? But their strength is they understand the business day to day. I always tell the story. You walk into a business and, it's that, maybe it's Christmas or that time of the year. It's very busy. It's a retail store. And there's people working the floor and everyone's getting taken care of, but the line's at the cash register. And you're thinking to yourself, we have all these people in here. Everyone's gotten taken care of, but we've got this massive line at the cash register. And you look, and the owner's the only one that's using the cash register because he's the only one that they trust with the money.
Mm.
Well, that becomes the bottleneck, right? You've got to trust your people. You've got to train them. You've got to develop them. So I think that at times, if we're not careful, and as you were talking about being competitive, if you're not, that could be a great strength of yours, being competitive. But when you take that too far, your strength now becomes your weakness.
What do you think about micromanagement? And what I want to expand on this question is the idea of micromanaging somebody in order to make sure that they're learning all the aspects and then doing it right. Let's say somebody who is an apprentice, somebody new, who's like, hungry and keen to learn. And so you might want to micromanage them at the beginning because that's where the feedback can come in, because you observe and they learn from it. But then long term, where it can become a detrimental.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's a big difference between micromanaging and training, right? So training is that process where I describe, I explain, I demonstrate, then you demonstrate, and then I recognize that you have the ability to do those things, and then I start easing back a little bit. That's training. Yeah. Micromanaging is when, your authority doesn't equal your responsibility, right? I've given you all this responsibility to do these things, but I don't give you the authority to do them. Or I'm questioning you at every turn. And so now I'm just frustrating you. So there's a big difference there. So in a new person in your organization, or someone who doesn't have a lot of tenure, someone's learning a new job, that's a training process, right? But I completely am willing to take that step back at the appropriate time. People who micromanage just don't know how to allow the people to have the authority that goes with the responsibility. It's very dangerous. It's probably, if you listed 4 or 5 things that cause turnover in an organization, there's a couple things that are pretty consistent turnover machines, but one of them is micromanaging, that you're not giving me the authority that goes with the responsibility. So I don't feel valued. I don't feel like you trust me. That's a very, very difficult thing. And I think early on, it's important for you to describe the training process. So if you're a new employee, I'm going to explain to you the training process. So I'm not overmanaging you, that I'm really working this process. I'm going to describe, I'm going to demonstrate, you're going to demonstrate back to me. And then I'm going to little by little give you more and more responsibility. And then once you're ready to go, we're going to look at each other and you're going to nod. I'm going to nod. I'm going to say, go fly. I got to go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I think but I've described that to you so that you're not confused as to, is the person's style? Is this what it's going to be like all the time? But micromanaging is a very, very, now there are times when people are starting to come off track a little bit, that I would say not so much micromanage, but which it is a little form of it. But what you're doing is you're helping them through that difficulty. Okay, you're starting to see they're getting too far off track and off plan. And once they get too far off, they may never be able to get back again. So that's when but that's a conversation you have when you sit down and you say, okay, Rocky, we're getting farther and farther off plan. Let's talk about some of the things we need to do. What help do you need from me? But we got to get you back on plan. I may be spending more time with you, but it's important that we get you back on plan.
The big message I'm getting from here is the way you explain it is the importance of really communicating that with that person, just being really open and explain, okay, this is why I'm doing it. I'm not here to harass you, micromanage you. There's a purpose to it. And once you're back on track, I'm moving on the other things, and you're good to go.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That summarizes it. It's interesting. A quick story for you. So, I talk a lot about my dad in the book, who since passed, but his influence on me growing up. But in my adult life, no one's been more of an influence to me than my wife, Debbie. And she's been a great friend, partner, and mentor, but just a great influence on me. And there's a story that I talk a lot about that was such a big influence on me in my adult life, both in business and in personal life. It's funny. We go out to dinner one night with this couple, and the woman says to Debbie, we have 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. And so the woman says to Debbie, so, hey, who's your favorite kid? And so Debbie looks at her. I don't have favorites. They're all my favorites. And so I kind of take a step. I got to lean back. I'm thinking, I want to hear how she answers this. I never really heard anybody ask her that question that way, So the woman says, no, come on. Someone has to be your favorite. Is it Jean Marie, Nicole, Rocky, Andrew? Come on. One of them's got to be your favorite. Is it Andrew because he's the youngest? And Debbie goes, no, they're all my favorite. And the woman says, how could that be? And then her answer, I got to tell you, was so impactful to me, so thoughtful, which is what she's really kind of described my wife. And here's her answer. They all feel like they're the favorite because each of them gets what they need when they need it. Now think about that for a second. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. Therefore, they all feel like they're the favorite. And I thought about that. And from that moment forward, that's how I managed all my operations and all the responsibilities I had. And so for me, if I had a seasoned CFO, for example, he or she didn't need me to overmanage them. They needed me to let them fly. It was more talkwits. They would tell me what's going on. You got it. You need help from me. Just go. So they felt like they were the favorite because they got to do what they needed to do and not be overmanaged. If I had a, director of sales, that maybe he or she was brand new in the job and they needed more of my time. Maybe they needed me to go with them to close a deal. Maybe they needed me to help them with a specific strategy for a customer. And so they were getting a lot of my time. So they felt like they were the favorite because they had my time and I was there when they needed me at those specific moments in time. And so if you think about it from that perspective, each person got what they need when they needed it. And I think that's such a great way to manage. And to your point, by communicating with individuals and talking to them, you're telling them why. Why are you here with me all the time? Am I doing something wrong? Did you lose confidence in me? Well, no, maybe the answer is, hey, I'm trying to help you get back on plan. You need that next win so that you're back on plan. I'm here to help you do that. But once they're on plan, what they need is not me overmanaging. So I think that's the other, valuable lesson there, that each person should get from you as the leader what they need when they need it.
And it's often, it's so easy to go and see, somebody may be underperforming and us feeling like, having that standard really high and just going straight into it and just telling them, hey, you're behind there and fix that and just directing the solution. And it's so easy for that to happen when we're so busy as business owners, right? We just want to fix that problem because that person's not really doing it properly because I don't know why. Maybe they're lazy, maybe something's going on but we don't have time to deal with it. We just get to tell them and move on. But that doesn't solve it long term. They might fix it. Oftentimes they might not. They might actually get pissed off, right? So having that conversation, like really put that whole thing around it, like, hey, I need to talk to you. How are you going? What's going on? Just noticed, some of the things in your day to day are sort of falling behind what's going on in your world. And that's when that sort of the idea of thoughtful leadership comes in, right?
Yes. Well, I think and the other thing, I talk a lot about is this whole concept of simple acts of kindness. Although it doesn't feel like it at that moment for the individual, that is a simple act of kindness where I'm coming up to you and I'm recognizing that you're struggling a little bit or you're frustrated, things aren't going the way you would like them to go. So that's a simple act of kindness where I'm just saying, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Is there anything I can do to help you? Sometimes it's just that conversation that helps people through that. But I think sometimes, to your point, we get so busy, we're so focused on what we're trying to accomplish that we sometimes miss that simple act of kindness of, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Or something simple as the reinforcement of, hey, great job yesterday. Thanks for all you do on behalf of our organization. A simple note. That's one of my biggest concerns coming out of COVID, that so many people work from home. We're doing so much on Zoom. We're doing so much on Skype now. And all that stuff makes sense from a safety perspective as we move through this. But as we come back, there's going to be those important things that still have to be done, and it still have to be done in a positive way, such as I can't send you a text that says, hey, nice job last year, here's your 2% increase. Well, no, that's a conversation you have to have with people. Or it's hard to have a career development conversation via text. And I think that's a concern, that we still have to have those critical conversations. We may do them from a distance, but they have to be had. And you have to be organized when you do them. You have to take the time to do them. Because that's a sign of respect, that I thought enough of you, that I laid out a game plan, laid out, your strengths, your weaknesses. What do I think your opportunity for you inside our organization? And what are some of the barriers that we can work together to help you break through to achieve those results?
Absolutely. And the other thing on that note, on sending somebody a text message, hey, you got a raise. I also think if you do that, that's very private. Nobody knows about it. In a way, it misses the point. It misses the full value of that activity of being promoted. Because I always think like marketing, right? Like if you have somebody in your organization, they're getting promoted, and there's other people in that team, you actually get more bang for your buck. You're going to make more impact if you sort of announce it. If you send out a company-wide, update. Hey guys, wanted to let you know Jimmy from over there, he's been working with us. Put a bit of a story around it, and just wanted, big congratulations for him and for his team for doing that, because that you acknowledge it publicly or within that organization where everybody else can see that, and that can become that inspiration for them as well to, oh wow, yeah, I know Jimmy, yeah, well I've been noticing he's been working so hard, and wow, that really inspires me to change maybe something in how I behave, how I work in this organization, so that I can perhaps grow as a person and get a promotion one day as well. Whereas if it was just that text message, nobody would knew. And I mean,
that's absolutely right.
Right. And it's not costing you more money. It's just
Hey, you praise in public and you discipline in private, and then I think that's important. And plus, the other thing is you're showing people the behavior that you recognize. Yeah. If Susan or Mary or Anthony are doing the things the way that the way the organization wants them to be done, they treat people with dignity and respect. They value diversity. They understand their roles and responsibilities. They have good results. Well, now they get promoted, or they have additional responsibilities. What you're doing is applauding that behavior. You're telling people that's what good looks like. If you want to understand what it takes to get to that next level, or take on additional responsibility, or do more inside our organization, grow and develop, there's a good model for you. Now, the opposite could happen too. If you promote that person who doesn't deserve it, there are no secrets in a business, by the way. Yeah. No matter how small or big your business is, there are no secrets in a business. And everybody, that person that's not doing their job, that no one's had a conversation with, everyone's sitting there wondering, well, when are they going to talk to that person? Like, how long is that person going to get away with this? And why am I doing more work because nobody's talking to them? So I think that, that's a double-edged sword, what you do in public, because you want to, it works well when you're applauding the right behavior and the right people are getting promoted and everyone knows that they deserve that job. But when that person gets that job that doesn't deserve it, what you're really doing is reinforcing bad behavior, and the good person starts to scratch their head and saying, well, if there's no value in being good, and there's no recognition in being good, I might as well just be middle of the road and just, why be an early adopter? I get no recognition for it.
Yeah, I think you hit a really good point on that, because that can undermine the whole integrity of your leadership when people see that. If you don't do thorough research on that person before you promote them, then it can definitely bite you back. And like I said, it can demotivate a lot of other people who may have been working a lot harder and have been unnoticed.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's talk about entrepreneurial spirit. You've had really interesting, career. You started from nothing, and your dad, gave you some really, valuable advice when you were young, and then from then, you work yourself up from just doing loading. Was that first position at UPS?
Yeah, I was loading and unloading trailers.
Right? Loading and unloading trailers. Hard work, nothing. The bottom line, right? And then you work hard, you stayed, you had strong work ethics, and you built yourself up to becoming a president of a variety of different divisions at UPS. So that's in itself, that's a success story in itself. But now you've got your own business. So tell us about that. How's that been going?
Well, during that tenure at UPS, as I said, I had the opportunity to, work with the UPS store network. So for me, it was a great opportunity. It was a direct report to me. And what happened was the UPS store network is a franchise network, but 100% franchisee owned. And I got the opportunity to work with all these entrepreneurs and gain such great respect and knowledge and understanding for what they did. Now, I was working for a large corporation at the time, UPS. And so I looked at them and I always said, I don't know if I could do what they do. I mean, it amazes me. And like I said, the respect I have for entrepreneurs. Think about this, and you know this as an entrepreneur yourself, but think about this. No one's more all in than an entrepreneur. They take everything they own in life, slide it across the table and say, I'm all in. I'm going to start my business. I'm going to take everything, all my savings, all my assets. I'm going to, some of them have their houses as part of the loans. They're all in. For me, and think about it from this perspective. At the end of the day, an entrepreneur hits a cash register, drawer opens. They pay their people, pay their vendor. What's left, they take home for their family. And that to me is the ultimate all in. And so I had such great admiration for entrepreneurs. And I, as I watched them, I always wondered, could I do it? Would I have the kind of the inner fortitude to do it? And as I said, such great respect. And so as I continue to grow and do other jobs in UPS, I always kept a watchful eye on the franchisees and the franchise network. And I did anything I could to get to know entrepreneurs as best I could. And when we had the sale at Unitech after retirement, and I was a CEO and we sold the company, I thought this would be a nice opportunity for me to maybe start my own business, speaking, leadership training, and consulting. Now, I clearly, I have a wonderful pension at UPS, and not clearly the same as an entrepreneur who's starting out, and they're putting food on.
But enough to be comfortable and play golf.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't ever I don't ever take that feeling like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur like every other. No. I mean, it's a difference. I mean, I'm learning it. I've learned from them. I'm trying, I'm doing the best I can to grow this business. But, I do, I had a wonderful career at UPS with a wonderful pension. So I never misunderstand this to be, I'm an entrepreneur as you are starting your business, and, your family, you're taking care of your family, what you're earning from your business. And so for me, I've learned so much from them. I've learned from doing this. I think the biggest thing is setting the right expectations for yourself as an entrepreneur, making sure that you take care of the details, make sure that you understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I think the other thing is I'm fortunate, I grew up having to have a more strategic mind of what are we going to look like in the future. I think as an entrepreneur that sometimes you're very tactical, so I feel like that helps me help them in this business now. So I think that combination of understanding how a big business runs, but the training and the mentoring I received from the franchisee kind of puts together a nice package for me to help other people. So I think that's the best thing that's happened to me, is that I've had that experience. I've had the experience of running a company. I've had experience of running large business units inside of UPS, but I've also had the experience of working with some of the finest entrepreneurs, and and to me, I combine all of that, and now can I help other people with that?
Absolutely. And so how do you do that these days? You've got a company, a management company.
Yeah. So we have a consulting side of 360 Management Services. We have the keynote speaking side. Then we have the leadership training side. And then we have the consulting side where we work with all size companies. We love working with small business owners because we feel like we can make a difference, and so we can get in there, we can assess things. We have a really interesting process that we use. It's we've kind of developed it from our background. So the interesting part, so as a UPSer years ago when I started, obviously in June 15th, 1976, so I'll give away my age, but I'm over 40 years, so you got to figure out, you got to be close on that, right? So June 15th, 1976. So in those days at UPS, when you went from part-time to full-time, you couldn't go into full-time supervision without being a UPS driver. And so I got the opportunity to be a driver, and I loved every minute of it. I was in my brown uniform, I was delivering, I loved it. But the lesson it taught me that stuck with me forever was it also gave me great confidence to understand the business, to understand what it is that we do. We're a delivery company. And so every job I received after that, so for example, when we purchased Mailbox, et cetera, it's a pack and ship franchise. First thing I did was put an apron on and work in the store, because I wanted to understand what it is that we do inside of the UPS store network. When we purchased all the companies and built UPS Supply Chain Solutions, if you wanted to find what I was doing, I was picking orders, I was understanding how the orders drop. I think that's what's so important. And I think that I learned that lesson early on in my career, that it's important to understand what it is that people do and how they do it. Now, you're clearly not going to have the expertise that they do, but you want to give them the respect of saying, I'm going to take the time to come out here and try to understand what it is you do, so that then you're comfortable enough to help me build a business the right way. You're willing to help me understand the business, and now we begin to work together. Well, that's what we do in our consulting business. Someone will call us in, for example, I'll just take an example, sales. Someone will call us in and say, hey, I think our sales force is off a plan. We may need some help with sales. Can you build us a sales training program? First thing we say is absolutely not. We're going to go out and spend a day with each of your account executives. No, they're really good. No, I'm not saying they're not good, but they're off a plan, and you want me to put them in a workshop. Why don't we go and spend? So we go out and spend a day. If it's a manufacturing and we're on a line or we're inside an organization, we go spend a day with the key players. We're working with a small business here in town, and he's got 35 technicians on the road. And first thing we said is, okay, we're going to spend a few hours with each of the people in your office, just 4 people in the office, and we're going to give me your best technician, your most help needed technician, and that technician that's right there somewhere in the middle. And let's go spend a day with each of them. And so what happens is you begin to understand the organization from the people who are executing the brand every day. So they're the people closest to your customers, closest to your closest to the not only your customers, but also your internal customers, how they interact with each other. So I think that process of trying to understand, taking the time to understand what it is that you do on a daily basis. So let's say, for example, if you called me in and said, hey, Rock, I'm trying to understand how to make my gym here, my fitness center more, maybe more streamlined, make it more effective, make it more user-friendly to our clients. Well, the first thing I would do is say, I'm going to come in and give me your best instructor or your coach. Give me your most help needed. Give me your newest coach. Let me see what they know. Let me see the people inside the office. Can I talk to 1 or 2 of your customers? Well, now you're getting that 360 view of what everyone thinks about your organization or about your business. And then what do they view as the strengths, the weaknesses, and some of the opportunities that exist for you to get better? But then what are some of the barriers that are preventing you from get there? So that's how we do it in a unique way. And I think it's a combination of what I learned through my days inside of UPS, my experiences there, my experiences taking on new opportunities outside of what we traditionally do. And then also from the entrepreneurs I had a chance to work with and through. It gives me kind of a full circle of learning.
And a really good point that you brought up there is, as a consultant, when you're trying to help other small business owners, and they might be coming from whatever industry, you said fitness, right? It's not necessarily about you understanding the technicalities of fitness, of what does a personal trainer do and how they can, right? It's about having that conversation with all those key players in that organization who, like as you said, have the direct relationship or the closest relationship with the clients, and just asking those questions. So understanding from their perspective, what do you think is going well? What do you struggle with? Because that gives you as a consultant that broad spectrum. And again, spectrum. And again, then you can provide those solutions, but not necessarily doesn't have to be a technical thing, right? The technical thing is what they should be figuring out anyway, right? Because it goes back to that coaching.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. It's interesting too. During this whole difficult pandemic, I mean, we still are doing quite a bit of consulting because although we're remote, we can do a lot via conversation with people. So, for example, we may not be able to go spend a day with a technician on the road, for example, but we can spend an hour with them on the phone. And by asking the right questions, by being that open kind of person or people that we are at 360, people are willing to talk to us. And so what happens is they start to describe, and since all of us, managed people on the road as delivery drivers for so many years, we kind of understand, that on-road side of the business. And so I think it's important that if you open the dialogue, if people understand that what you're doing stems from an honest heart, you're trying to just improve things, but you want their input, people are more willing to give you their input. And then the other thing is, to your point, you start to close the gap of the disconnect, right? Because you have a vision of running a world-class organization. They're as a customer or as an employee, they're hoping to work for a world-class organization, but you don't have world-class results right now. So what's that gap? What's preventing you from executing your vision of having a world-class organization and them wanting you to be world-class? Because people want to work for world-class organizations. Customers want to engage with world-class organizations. So you have the aspiration, they have the desire, but yet there's that gap. And sometimes the conversation that you have one-on-one with those two individuals, you as a person asking the question or the person going out and spending time with them, you uncover that gap that neither one of them has seen because they're so busy doing their jobs, their heads down, chopping wood, trying to do the best they can. They're trying to do the best they can for you as an employee, or the customer's got their own set of problems going on that you're talking right past each other.
The hard thing here, I think, is also, and this is only what I think, I haven't really experienced, but what I've observed in conversations with other people is, if those big organizations, when you've got somebody who's high up in that top executive role, and then you've got those employees who are in those highly technical roles, and the disconnect that can happen between those two areas, where these guys are facing completely different problems, and they see the company's solution completely different than what the guys up the top, right? I really like the analogy of what Gary Vaynerchuk often says, is the clouds and the dirt, right? You need to be clouds, referring to as somebody who's in that, that eagle, top executive, right, doing the bigger picture decisions. And then you got the dirt, which is the little bits, the actual technical aspect of day to day, right? And I think, it's a two-sided, as two things to look at here, right? One is, well, if you are in that top executive position, you can't get yourself too obsessed with the little minor details, because you do need to make those big picture decisions, right? But then those decisions, I think, would you agree that those still need to be based on you understanding all the aspects of the business, not just at the top, but also having some good insights to the bottom, what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it starts with your belief as the leader that there are no easy jobs in our company, and each of us plays a role. One job is not more important than another job. Think about a football team. If you've got 11 people in the huddle, clearly the quarterback's in charge of the huddle, because if you had everybody talking in the huddle, you'd never get the playoff. But that quarterback is not going to be very successful if the guards and tackle aren't blocking. Same with, take a soccer game, right? The forwards are not more important than the defenseman than the goalie. And so it's the same inside of a business. I think what ends up happening is I have a role and responsibility as CEO. I used to tell people all the time, as CEO, I was a chief enthusiasm officer. I was, that was my role. It wasn't to run the day-to-day operations. So but I recognized that the most important person in our organization was that person closest to our customers. So inside UPS, the most important person inside UPS isn't the CEO, it's the driver. It's the driver who's interacting with our customer, because they're executing the brand promise. So I think that's a little bit of the disconnect. So as the leader, you may have a certain role, responsibility as CEO, the way a quarterback does, or the captain of a team does. but that doesn't mean your role responsibility is more important than the goal, than the goalie, or than the driver. So I think that you don't ever lose sight of that. We're all in this together. There are no easy jobs inside an organization. Everyone's job is important, or it wouldn't be there. So I think that you have to recognize that and give that respect to those individuals. And then, there was a show on here in the U.S. I'm not sure if it's on there in Australia, but it's called Undercover Boss. And it's these, the CEO goes down undercover and spends time in the operation. And, I don't understand how anybody would view that as, I mean, it's a great show. Everybody enjoys it. But as a CEO, would you want to be the undercover boss? That means nobody knows who you are. Would you want to be, when you want to be, there was another show on for many years called
sounds
Cheers.
very authoritative. It's sort of coming from an authoritative aspect of like, well, I don't want anybody to know. I just want to go there and see who's doing everything wrong, or like can come across like that, isn't it? I think
we're up trying to fix things, but I mean, as a CEO, don't you think you should know what's going on inside your organization? I mean, it's a good show. People like it. I mean, but I would never go on a show like that. That would be saying, it would break my heart that nobody knows, I don't know what's going on. I mean, that means that you don't foster the type of communication. You don't set the tone from the top that says, I want to know about things that aren't right. I want to, look, part of what makes great leaders are people who can accept bad news. If you don't get any bad news, it's because you've set up this barrier that you're not willing to accept bad news. So no one's going to bring you bad news if you're the kind of person that says, kill the messenger. Well, then who's going to bring you bad news?
Yeah.
It's almost it's a suicide mission if I bring you bad news, because I know you don't accept it. So I think if you're not getting bad news, it's because you're not setting the tone that you're willing to accept bad news.
I think also it's a problem of ego.
Yep.
Just get back to that point of personal brand and the importance of being connected to customers. I've got a really good analogy in hospitality industry, which is where I was actually leading into when I was 18. I got qualified as a cook, and I thought one day I'm going to become a chef and all that. So I've done a couple of apprentices, different restaurants, and one thing I've noticed is is the supply chain, right? Similar to, like, I guess, a post and sending packages, UPS, supply chain in a restaurant. You've got the kitchen, you've got the cook who has to prepare the meal. Then you've got the waiting staff, and you got the table where the customer sits and waiting for that nice warm meal, right? And I've worked at places where they never really get to connect with the chef. They're sort of hidden behind the kitchen, and the whole experience is purely dependent on what's on the plate, how it tastes, how it looks, and the customer service delivered by the waiting staff. But then I worked at one place, which was in Greece. I was there for 4 months as an apprentice, and one thing that I loved there was the chef. He was kind of a bit of an entertainer. He wouldn't just make good meals. They were great meals, but he would, we would prepare the buffet and everything, and then he would go and talk to everybody. He would sit at a table. He would have a meal with the guests, and it was just amazing. People loved it, and the experience that they got out of it, and him telling them what's in the meal and some special ingredients is, and then them telling him like feedback, and everybody was just having a really good experience. I think it's so important to that connection with customers across all the different levels of the business, because you might be the owner, you might be the passionate chef, you might own that restaurant, but if you're constantly hidden in the kitchen, again, you might have that problem, like I said, where there's that disconnect. You don't know what the feedback from the customers really is. I mean, other than you look at a Yelp review later, which is, again, digital on the internet. But there's nothing better than going and face to face, talking to those customers, and not only getting feedback, but you actually just expanding that experience for them, because they're going to feel more special, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the biggest reason why leaders don't leave their office, or chefs don't leave the kitchen, in your example there, is because they don't want to hear bad news. Once you leave your office, once you leave that kitchen, then you have to be willing to accept the bad news and be willing to fix it. But if you never want bad news, or you never want to hear about bad news, then you just stay in your office, or you stay in the kitchen, and everything is wonderful in your office and everything is great in your kitchen. But I think that's a sign of a person who really wants to own the results and really wants to improve things. And that's why they're willing to leave the comfort of the kitchen or the comfort of their office, because they really do want to know. And they set the tone that I want to know. And you're going to you think you delivered a great meal, but maybe the customer didn't like the spices or whatever it is. I mean, 10 people before loved it, the 11th person didn't. Well, now you're going to hear about that meal, but you're willing to hear about it because you want that customer to know that you care enough that you're willing to come out there and listen to that and understand and empathetically understand what they're telling you.
And maybe it is also that everything is perfect, the meals are perfect, everything is perfect, but you are stuck in the kitchen in day to day, and that's not fun. I mean, you might end up after a few years actually losing the passion for your initial love for cooking because you're just in the grind, right? So that's, again, another one. Look after yourself in a way as well. It's not just, again, that feedback from the customers, but it also looks after your own, just keeping in tune with your initial passion for why you were doing it. By going to those customers and just having a good conversation of them, just acknowledging, strengthening that, that message that yes, you are a good chef and this meal is awesome, and we value you, that you come out to us, and having the chat and just expanding that experience for us. Great dinner. And yeah, Rocky, you are also a keynote speaker, and this is not something that you may have envisioned to become when you started, but now you do that. What was that journey for you to become a speaker?
Well, it's interesting because it's probably one of the last things that anybody thought I would be, or including myself. I mean, I was that person that never really enjoyed public speaking. In fact, when I was in the 5th grade play, the Christmas play, I just wanted to be the baby Jesus, lay me in swaddling clothes and lay me in a manger. I don't want to say anything, But one of the things that I learned as I was growing and developing throughout my career was that communication was such an important part. And to be a successful leader, you really needed to be a good communicator. And so I was good on a one-on-ones communication. I needed to work on my public speaking. And so that's what I did. I worked on my public speaking, and and how I did it was, when I do my keynote speaking or I do public speaking, I visualize, or I look at individuals in the audience, and I visualize a one-on-one conversation. So it's easier for me to have a one-on-one conversation. So as I look out in the audience, I'm making eye contact with people in the audience, no matter how large. I've given speeches over 1,000 people, 150, 225 people. So for me, it's funny, most of my comments were always, entertaining, learned a lot, very educational, but I felt like he was talking directly to me. Well, I was, because I was making eye contact, and that was my way of getting over it. So part of what you have to do is you have to work on the things. You have to look at, your skills inventory and understand what are the things that I need to do and things I need to work on. And I got to work on those things. And I may be uncomfortable public speaking. I can't avoid it. I have to get better at it. And then as I was growing and developing inside UPS, I, became somewhat the designated speaker for different topics. And then as I retired and moved on, I got calls from people, would you be interested in doing a speech or a topic? And now I absolutely enjoy it. It's kind of teaching not in a classroom setting, but now in kind of a lecture hall setting is how I look at it.
No, it's very empowering. I watched one of your videos on your website where you've got some of the examples for obviously promoting your speaking services, and you gave that speech somewhere. It was like a podium with a blue curtain behind you. It was very energetic. Loved it. It was very empowering, very inspirational. Good. So I think as a speaker, you were hitting all the points, strong voice, clear message, powerful message, inspirational, but also some really cool storytelling. And what I really like was the persona that you've developed. Keen to share on that for the listeners? Because I kind of know what it is, but...
Yeah. So as I was growing and developing, I never liked when someone brought me an idea that I would say, well, but that's a good idea, but what if you did this, or what if you looked at that? I always felt like that at that moment, you thought I didn't think it was a good idea, or that I wasn't happy, that maybe there were some more things you could have looked at or done. And so over the course of the time, I created this character, Joe Scaffone. I would say to you, hey, that's a great idea, but you think Joe Scaffone thinks that's a good idea? And it was my way of challenging you not to stop at the first right answer, but in a positive way, and not make you feel less than, or that I didn't think what you were presenting was good or complete. And so Joe Scaffone became that character throughout my career, that I could challenge you to not stop at the first right answer or maybe move past what you initially did in a positive way. And so I wrote the book in this third character, in this third person, Joe Scaffone. And it became, it's funny, people who work for me over time would say, hey, I covered this with Joe Scaffone already. So Joe Scaffone's become this, buddy of mine that helps me not say, I would do it this way, or I think you should do it that way. I just use Joe. Hey, Joe thinks you might want to look at it a different way.
Yeah, and I think it's important to bring a bit of that lightheartedness to the working environment. So kudos to you, mate.
Yep.
Now, tell us about the book. What is the book called again, and why did you write it?
So the book's called Tighten the Lug Nuts. It's kind of my journey through a story, and it's I think you'll find it very entertaining as well as educational. And it's the many lessons and things that happened to me along my journey. It's written by Joe Scaffone, so Joe's kind of the character in the book. And the title of the book's called Tighten the Lug Nuts. It's a chapter in the book, and it's a lesson in the book. And simply put, when the lug nuts on a vehicle, when the lug nuts on the wheels are loose, they're important. And you can simply just go over and tighten them, and it's fixed. But if you get sidetracked or distracted and you forget to tighten those lug nuts, something simple you could have done in a few minutes, a few days later, you now have a problem with the front wheel coming off, or a loose wheel, and now it becomes urgent. And so people can only handle so many important, urgent things in their personal or professional life. So don't allow important things to become urgent. Tighten the lug nuts.
Love it. Where's the book? Is it available? Where can people buy it?
It's on a 5-star Amazon book. It's been very humbling how well it's been selling, and it's also on Barnes and Noble online as well. So it's Amazon does an absolutely fantastic fulfillment, and so you can get it at Amazon online or Barnes and Noble online.
Do you always think back, like when somebody buys your book, do you like in your head like visualize how the book's like traveling through all the supply chain?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I really do. And it's funny because it's selling worldwide now, and so it's pretty cool to have people in Australia buy the book and in England buy the book. Recently, we've had a lot of sales in India. So I think it's pretty cool. I mean, the U.S. has been a lot of fun, but it's nice to see. And people send me emails and, what their favorite story in the book is. Or I get a lot, like today I signed 30 books for, an association up in upstate New York that's giving out scholarships to juniors and seniors in high school going into college. And so for the scholarship members, I signed 30 books for them and sent that off to them. So I enjoy doing those kinds of things as well.
No, that's awesome. Now, Rocky, on a completely different subject, we've covered so much about leadership and business and employee management and all those aspects. But I also want to talk about, because when it comes to, someone's story of success, somebody listening, looking at, becoming more successful in life and in business, it's not only important to understand all the aspects that we've discussed, becoming a better leader and all that sort of stuff, but it's also very important to realize the importance of health and fitness, having a really good balanced lifestyle and being physically fit so that you can perform at your best. How important is fitness for you?
Well, it's extremely important. We have the Peloton that Deb and I use quite a bit. I go out for my runs as I think through things. I do, as I said, probably not as much as I thought I would, but I play a little bit of golf and I try to walk whenever I can. So for me, it's very important. It also gives me a way to clear my mind. But I think the balance part is so important too, right? Because, one of the things I learned over my career is the difference between, things that are important and things that are, nice to do things and need to do things. And so I think some of the mistakes you make early on in your career is you put everything in need to do, but there are quite a few things that you do are nice to do things. And when you have that decision on a nice to do thing, you can put that nice to do thing on the side and maybe make a little league game or, make a soccer game, or make a, a cheerleading event with your family, because you recognize that these are nice to do things, not need to do. But if you put everything in need to do, you really kind of shut off your personal life and you end up doing everything in your professional life. So I think that balance starts there with understanding, nice to do and need to do, and then making the right decisions. And many times, and now that you know that everything's not need to do, it could be you go for a run, you go for a walk with your spouse, significant other, friend. Those are the things that are important. You realize that you put your phone down and you don't take it with you on the run because, you know what, if you get that phone call, you get that text, you may stop. And so I think those things are all important. So that balance is so important in both your personal and professional life.
Absolutely. And I also think it's a from a health perspective, it's a preventative thing, right? We're so much more sedentary, especially now everybody works from home and stuck in a chair. And with that sedentary lifestyle, there's so many, negative, health associated risks from, developing cancers. Obesity is a big one, becoming more overweight. So people not only consider this as something, that's a nice thing to do, to go for a run feeling good, but it's really, you need to do that because it's, if you've got other people relying on you as well, especially, then you got to look after yourself so that you can not only prevent those nasty things, but perform at your ultimate peak. Yeah. And then when you do, that's how you become a better leader, because you get more energy, you feel more positive, and everything just rolls well. Rocky, thank you for being on the show. It's been amazing having to talk to you and talk to our listeners about your story and everything that we discussed. I'm going to put everything in the show notes for those of you who are looking to connect for some business consulting. You have a website, 360 Management Solutions, correct?
Management Services.
What's the website name?
360managementservices.com. There's also a website for the book. It's lugnnuts.com. So, and then of course on my website, you can interact with me, but doing a lot of virtual things too. Did a couple of virtual keynotes a few weeks ago. I've been doing a lot of conference calls with companies that are looking for, some training or a different voice on their own conference calls. So if any of those things appeal to you or you'd like to discuss any of those, feel free to contact me through the website, or my email is Rocky, Rocky, Romanella, Romanella @gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Rocky. You have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to speak to you soon again.
All right, my friend, be safe, and it was a pleasure being on your show. Be safe. Talk to you soon.